There's something uniquely wonderful about watching that kind of performance from France. Whereas watching Japan in the last World Cup tickled the pleasure centre of my brain in the same way as building a really impressive Lego model, or seeing the All Blacks or Leinster at their best provides the same crisp, constructed thrill as watching a Steven Spielberg movie, or as a Welsh type, the way England executed against the All Blacks in Ireland last year provided the very similar bittersweet sensation to realising that Dylan Hartley is actually an excellent and self-effacing pundit. Nothing quite feels like watching France. France don't play so much as just happen. While Scotland and South Africa taking England apart can be satisfying, watching France do it makes me laugh. It'll be the same when they play Italy next week, or inevitably the All Blacks in the knockouts in 2023. I don't even know if it's funny, but there's something about watching a French side click, really properly click like they did in that first half on Sunday, that makes me chuckle harder than St. Peter will when Israel Folau finally pops it and knocks on those pearly gates. France exploded into life on Sunday, making a huge statement right at the start of the tournament by shutting out a faltering England and giving me one more week's grace before I look like an idiot for predicting a French Grand Slam on the Pro 14's official website. So, how did France tear them apart? And what do England need to fix going into the next 4 games? Things started really well with this try from thumb-faced mad lad Vincent Rattez. It's a superb line from Rattez, who more than made up for the loss of Damien Penaud by playing one of the games of his life in the first half before running himself into the ground by the 60-minute mark. But it all begins far earlier with the real star of this French side, Antoine Dupont. France are plonked between the 22 and the halfway line and beginning to stall when Dupont throws this beauty of a pass. It may look fairly standard, but he just pings it perfectly between 2 English defenders and encourages the outstanding Gregory Aldrit to run onto it. Instead of passing to Aldrit for him to carry, he hangs the ball into such a space that any one of 3 French forwards could run onto it, and whoever did is crossing that gain line. This allows Aldrit, already an excellent carrier, to make so much more ground than he would have if he took it standing still, or even if he was just running onto a pass for him. France clear out quickly, with Cyril Bart. He's so eager to clear out Jamie George, you'd think he had something to say about his mother, dragging George just slightly out of line. This creates the small list of disconnects in English line, and Teddy Thomas sniffs inside the ball. He calls it, but instead of giving it right away, Dupont picks, goes and draws just enough of the defence to make that disconnect into a genuine hole before putting Thomas through it. France recycle the ball quickly, they try to use the overlap, they keep pressing a few phases until Untermack again is able to create a disconnect. He just waits for Sinclair to come out of line to fixate on him and make a little hole to sneak Rattez and his remarkable hooter through for the score. This was just the start of a phenomenal game by Dupont, who managed a really impressive feat by somehow managing to make Ben Youngs look like even more of a useless twat than he already does himself. Dupont's ability to snipe and probe is well documented, but kicks like this put England under so much pressure, and then we have him just eating Willie Hines on toast here, putting in a tackle and knocked all the beans out of him. He maintained that tempo to keep France completely on top for the first 50 odd minutes, alongside Roman Untermack, who just had a really quiet class about him, and they kept England very much in their box for the entire game. France scoring the first try was massive. I talked at length during the World Cup about how England were reliant on scoring the first try. Their game plan built around getting ahead early and then managing the game from there. After France dotted down first, England's indiscipline began to show, as Moratoja in particular regressed once again from world-class athlete to petulant child and started giving away pointless daft penalties that saw him frankly lucky to stay out the sin bin. However, France scoring the first points wasn't for want of trying. The last 18 months, England have typically pulled a huge pre-prepared set move off their first passage of possession, pulling the trigger the moment they get a line out in or around the opposition half. And whereas last year South Africa and Wales stole the Six Nations and the World Cup title from England respectively, largely by denying them a line out early doors, France did actually give England a chance to pull something. And, in a very him manner, Eddie Jones tried to troll us all by pulling this. In possibly the most meta piece of international rugby you'll ever see, Eddie Jones had his team run the move that took South Africa out of his own side's reach in the 2019 Rugby World Cup final. This is supposed to be a statement of intent. Their first attack of a new World Cup cycle. We know he got beaten up, caught out, ultimately lost last time, but this time England are ready. This is a statement. Except every single word in that statement is misspelt.
Probably don't teach that at Harrow.
The Springboks version worked so well because it's fresh and inventive, yet so simple. That's the core of the Erasmus approach to coaching. You come up with something ingenious, then you strip it right back until it's foolproof, until the margin of error is as small as humanly possible, so it can be replicated time and time again. This is something Eddie Jones ignores. In the South African version, the Boks throw to the front to conserve energy, there's no lift in the line out, they fire it to Diolande to carry, and then only pile in backs to clear out. They then flash back towards the touchline where they played the line out, having given all the forwards time to set properly, not having had to move far at all. All the players aren't just randomly thrown in, they're carefully chosen and placed. England get every single part of why this maul worked wrong. A feat made all the more baffling by the fact they bought World Cup winning forwards coach Matt Proudfoot out of his Springboks contract to join them. Unfortunately, there's no footage of the line-out, but England go off the top and let Tuolangi carry. Instead of using other backs to clear, England sacrificed one forward in Sam Underhill, only allowing them 7 men in the maul, not the full Bok 8. However, Tuolangi carries far further infield than Diolande did, and instead of flashing back to the side where all the forwards were, England forced their entire pack to work right round to the other side of the field. This means, even with the ball being as slow as you'd expect when Ben Youngs is at 9, England have too much to do too early. Compare the shape of the two mauls before the ball arrived. South Africa are formed, they're ready, it looks formidable. England are just clumped and shapeless. Kyle Sinclair's in front of the proposed carrier when the ball comes out, for God's sake. He then proceeds to mess up his line royally, just kind of sprinting in and falling over, wrecking the whole thing. Marler is hit hard as the ball carrier, having stopped still before even reaching the French line, and as good as trips over once they do get going forward. When the thing does stutter to a stop, having made a measly 5 metres and not won a penalty, there's only one French player committed, but 7 from England. They've depleted all attacking options on a move that was really about trying to buy a penalty in a spot that, whilst in range, is far less simple than the shot Erasmus was able to orchestrate. Blame falls both on Jones for not working out why the move worked in the first place, and for the England players for calling it at the wrong time, then making an absolute hash of it. The perception is that South Africa won the World Cup based on brawn alone, but this, more than anything we actually saw during the World Cup, shows just how smart they had to be to get the most out of their big bashy bastard boys. But this was far from the only attacking opportunity England blew. England had countless phases in the French 22, and from them scored 3 points. It's to England's credit that they got down there so often, but once they're near the line, everything seemed to fall apart. Watching England in the French 22 during the first half, I felt like France were more likely to score from an intercept or a breakaway than England were from actual phase play. This was despite an actually very good performance by George Ford, who I didn't notice watching it live, but watching it back had an even more frustrating day at the office than the rest of the team, because every time he did something well, another England player seemed to bomb the chance. However, no opportunity will have frustrated Ford or fans of the Red Rose more than this. A strong maul forces the French pack to commit, and then a great drive by Daly drags in 3 backs. England have very quickly committed 12 of the French 15, leaving only Vakatawa and Rattez covering more than half the pitch. In fact, the only man this side of the post from either team is Johnny May, the quickest man on the field. England have done all the hard work, and all they have to do is somehow get the ball onto this side of the pitch. Just sling it, kick it, any way to get it there, and it's a score. This is where things become a tale of 3 Georges. Ford notices this and starts clapping, screaming for the ball. Except, instead of just standing about here and creating overlap and likely scoring himself, but if not definitely giving the assist for May, debutant fullback George Furbank comes in on one of the most bafflingly stupid lines I've ever seen in international rugby. He's never getting the ball, and even if he does, he's getting absolutely chomped up. He's running right into where all of the French players are. He commits no defenders with his dummy run, no one notices he's there, no one's watching him, but worst of all, he gets in the way, meaning, even if he wasn't too busy being thick, Ben Youngs couldn't have got the ball back to his fly off to spin it wide because Furbank's in the way. So instead, the ball goes to Jamie George, who carries, and Ford loses his shit. Look at him, he throws his arms in the air in anger, he's furious. So Youngs finds it impossible to ignore and fires it back to his 10, except now the chance is gone, but England run it anyway. France have reorganised, May gets stopped in his tracks, England try and pick and go, but they get turned over, and the chance is gone. I hate to do this, but since I mentioned him, I am going to need to linger for a second longer on poor old Lieutenant George Furbank. Now, I've been a big fan of Furbank for a while. He plays like a proper tradesman fullback. He would convulse at the thought of playing on the wing, and he looks like the kind of guy who isn't really your friend, but you sit with to eat your lunch at work at least 3 days a week. He's solid, reliable, never lets Saints fans down, and has a moustache that makes him look like a World War I soldier that's about to be sent over the top. But, cruelly, that also felt like a perfect metaphor for the way in which Eddie Jones dumped him into international rugby. A few weeks ago, I tweeted this whilst watching a Northampton game, because, for me, Furbank felt like the epitome of a Premiership player. He fits into the grand tradition of Dan Evans, Chris Pennell, Gavin Duffy, Ben Blair, even Simon Goddamn Hammersley, of entirely solid, reliable fullbacks who are excellent for their club every single week but never quite cut it at international level. They're borderline my favourite kind of player after nippy Argentine wingers. Now, I'm not going to go full Andy Good and claim I know better on selection Eddie Jones, because I outright don't. I really don't. And besides, it's his game plan he's designing. He's the one that gets to make those calls. And when I listen to why he selected him in the first place, it does make sense. Let's hear it.
George Furbank, he was one of the first players I noticed when I came back from from the World Cup, very composed, good core skills, got good positional sense, and when we got him in the camp he showed all of those sort of things under pressure, and he's thoroughly deserves the opportunity.
Yeah, whilst Furbank settled in the second half, I worry a lot of the mistakes he made were just from the sheer pace of the game. He was just a second or two off. This chip may have come off in the Premiership. The space is there, but at test level, this is being covered 98 times out of 100. It's a waste of possession, and it leads actually from this box kick directly to France's second try, finished from a fantastic support line by their new captain, Charles Olivon. Then we have this passage, not long after Rasser's opening try. A great carry by Tuolangi gets England going forward, taking a tight ball from George Ford, and England shape do the same again, and they try and bring a big ball carrier in off Ford, but instead he fires a fantastic flat ball to the fullback, coming into the line late. England ran this move pretty much exactly out in Dublin in their opening game last year, and something similar in the semi-final against the All Blacks, and both times it led to tries. And here, if Furbank takes it, it's a simple 2-on-1, and you expect it to then be an easy try for England to bring them level. Except Furbank drops it. He's mistimed it by a fraction of a second. He's just an inch or two too flat, and it's opportunity blown. But this is what Test rugby is like. Premiership rugby is an insanely high standard, and it's all about individual seconds and individual metres. But international rugby, especially Six Nations and World Cup rugby, is all about milliseconds and individual inches. And these are inches France kept stealing from England. Yes, England misfired an attack, but France's defence was superb. All the talk has been of Sean Edwards, but I do think, despite me missing him desperately, Fabien Galtier has not been getting enough credit for making this French team look totally cohesive and for putting a blueprint for their defence in place at the World Cup. Aside from two moments of absolutely insane skill and brilliant finishes from Johnny May, England didn't look like crossing the French line at all. And even then, both of May's tries could have been stopped by Teddy Thomas, but you get a sense Teddy just went full game respect game and let him finish them. But this was France's one issue. Warren Gatland used to say consistently that Wales were the fittest team in the world, and that's for the simple reason that they had to be. The Edwards defence doesn't work unless you're working, all game long, and France began to tire big time over the 80 minutes. You wonder whether the next few weeks is long enough for them to develop the level of fitness required to pull off the Edwards defence. 3 years certainly, but 3 weeks is an ask. I may have predicted the Grand Slam earlier, but if France are going to lose any game this year, I suspect it'll be late on away to Wales as fatigue begins to set in. This team aren't used to working so hard, and round 3 away in Cardiff doesn't give you the same kind of second wind as being 20 minutes away from a Grand Slam against Ireland dans le Paris, because this French squad is not done being wonderful. And whilst there's every chance they could force us to bring out a certain old cliche when they play Italy next weekend, this side feels so much more settled, together, thought out. Gautier seems to have managed to capture the same squeezy glee of France at their best without having too much insanity. England have a lot to work on before their trip to Murrayfield, but there is enough in that performance to show promise. The reason I'm so hard on them is because they're a world-class team with incredibly high standards. They just played in the World Cup final, for God's sake. But unfortunately, sometimes these games happen, and sometimes there's nothing you can do but sit back and laugh when France decide to just happen. Welcome back to everyone who decided not to unsubscribe when you saw I did a video on a women's game, because apparently women can play rugby as well, and apparently it can be really, really good and of a really high standard, which is a thing many people in the comments are willing to accept. And if you are, if you have decided to unsubscribe or whatever, then good riddance. I would rather have fewer subscribers if a lower percentage of them were twats. So thank you very much. Otherwise, thank you for watching that. Genuinely, I hugely appreciate it. It is about 2:30 in the morning. I've literally just finished it, and it will be the morning that you're probably waking up from now if you're watching it as it goes out. If not, thank you for watching it back. I am intending to get onto Wales Italy next, because I've got that one written, I've got that one already, but I've had loads of problems the last couple of days getting hold of footage to edit. So I'm trying to blitz through as much of it now as I can. I basically haven't stopped since the final whistle on pretty much the first game. So I'm going to get back to it now. Yeah, I am. And then maybe sleep at some point. All right, cheers. Bye.
Youngs. To nobody.
Probably don't teach that at Harrow.